Ryan never believed life would slow down for him, but he lived like it would. Every morning in Austin, the sun climbed over the skyline like it had somewhere important to be. Cars filled the roads, people rushed with purpose, coffee shops buzzed with quiet ambition, but Ryan? He moved like time owed him something. At 27, he had ideas, hundreds of them. Business plans scribbled in half-filled notebooks, dreams of building something real, something his. But those ideas stayed exactly where they were born, in his head. He worked odd jobs, delivery driving, warehouse shifts, freelance gigs, but nothing he truly cared about. It wasn't laziness. It was hesitation. A quiet, constant voice telling him, "You've got time. Start tomorrow." Tomorrow became his favorite lie. One afternoon, Ryan sat outside a small cafe near Lady Bird Lake. The water shimmered under the Texas heat, joggers passed by with sweat and determination, cyclists sped past like they were racing something invisible. He watched them, sipping his now cold coffee. An older man sat beside him, mid-60s, maybe older. His posture wasn't perfect, but his eyes were alive. There was something about him, like he had lived enough to know something Ryan didn't. "You keep watching life like it's a movie," the man said suddenly. Ryan blinked. "What?" "You're observing," the man continued. "Not participating." Ryan let out a nervous laugh. "I'm just figuring things out." The man nodded slowly. "That's what I used to tell myself." There was a pause. "I had plans too," he went on. "Big ones. I kept waiting for the right time. More money. More confidence. Less fear." He looked out at the water. That time never came. What came instead was age. Ryan didn't respond. "Life doesn't wait," the man said, standing up carefully. "It moves. Whether you move with it or not, that's your choice." And just like that, he walked away. The words stuck longer than Ryan expected. That night, back in his small apartment, the silence felt louder than usual. The cluttered desk, the unfinished ideas, the untouched plans, they all felt like evidence. Not of effort, but of delay. He opened one of his notebooks. Inside were sketches for a small mobile repair business he had dreamed about starting, fixing phones, laptops, offering quick home services. It was practical. Needed. Real. And yet, untouched. His phone buzzed. A message from an old friend, "Bro, I just launched my business today. Took a risk. Feels crazy." Ryan stared at the screen. A strange mix of pride and discomfort filled him. He typed, "That's awesome, man." But what he didn't type was the truth. "I've been thinking about doing something like that for years." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The old man's words echoed again. "Life doesn't wait." For the first time, Ryan asked himself a question he had been avoiding: if not now, then when? The next morning felt different, not dramatically, not magically, but quietly. Instead of scrolling through his phone, he sat at his desk. Instead of overthinking, he wrote one simple thing: start small. No big plan. No perfect strategy. Just movement. He spent the day researching tools. Watching repair tutorials. Listing what he needed, not everything, just the basics. It wasn't impressive. But it was real. For the first time in years, Ryan wasn't waiting. He was starting. And life, as always, was still moving. The difference now. He finally was two. Part 2. Starting didn't feel like success. It felt uncomfortable. Ryan quickly realized that action wasn't the same as confidence. In fact, the more he did, the more he became aware of everything he didn't know. His first repair job came from a local listing he hesitantly posted online. A cracked phone screen. Simple, at least that's what the video tutorials made it seem like. But when he sat in the client's living room, tools laid out on the table, hands slightly shaking, reality hit differently. This wasn't practice anymore. This was real. He took a breath and reminded himself, you chose this. The repair wasn't perfect. It took longer than expected. There were moments he thought he might mess it up completely. But he didn't quit. When he finally handed the phone back, working again, the client smiled. That's all I needed, she said. It wasn't a big moment. No applause. No celebration. But something inside Ryan shifted. For the first time, he felt proof, not in his thoughts, but in his actions. He could do this. Days turned into weeks. Mistakes happened. Tools broke. Some customers complained. Others recommended him. Growth didn't come as a straight line, it came messy, unpredictable, and sometimes frustrating. There were nights he questioned everything again. Was I better off just thinking about it? But then he remembered what thinking alone had given him, nothing. One evening, exhausted after a long day, Ryan found himself back near Lady Bird Lake. The same place. The same movement of life around him. But this time, he wasn't just watching. His phone buzzed again, another request. Another job. He smiled slightly. Not because it was easy. But because it was happening. He never saw the old man again. But he didn't need to. The lesson had already done its work. Ryan finally understood something most people realize too late: life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It doesn't pause while you doubt yourself. It doesn't slow down because you're unsure. It moves. And the only real choice you have is whether you move with it. Months later, Ryan's small operation had grown into something steady. Not massive, not perfect, but real enough to sustain him. More importantly, it changed him. He no longer introduced himself as someone figuring things out. He became someone doing the work. The difference wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It was one decision: to stop waiting. Because waiting feels safe, but it costs time. And time. That's the one thing life never gives back. Ryan looked out at the city lights of Austin one night, standing on his apartment balcony. For once, he wasn't thinking about what he could do someday. He was thinking about what he had already started. And that made all the difference. Because life never waited for him. But he finally stopped waiting for life. Starting changed Ryan, but not in the way people imagine. There was no sudden confidence, no overnight transformation where everything just clicked. Instead, there was friction. Resistance. Doubt that didn't disappear just because he had taken the first step. In Austin, life kept moving at the same relentless pace it always had. Traffic still rushed past like urgency had a sound. People still woke up chasing something. Nothing about the world slowed down just because Ryan had decided to finally act. That was the first lesson he truly understood: action doesn't make life easier, it makes you stronger inside it. His small repair hustle started with basic tools spread across a worn-out table in his apartment. Screwdrivers, replacement screens, a cheap heat gun, nothing impressive. But each item represented something bigger than its price. Commitment. His first few weeks were rough. One customer canceled last minute after he had already traveled across town. Another complained about a delay. A third tried to negotiate his already low price down even further. Every setback whispered the same dangerous thought: you see? This is why you didn't start earlier. And for a moment, just a moment, Ryan almost believed it. But then he remembered something deeper. Not starting had never protected him. It had only kept him stuck. So instead of quitting, he adjusted. He improved how he communicated. Set clearer expectations. Practiced more. Watched tutorials late into the night, not because he felt motivated, but because he refused to go back to doing nothing. Motivation faded quickly. Discipline didn't. Days blurred into weeks. Ryan's routine changed without him even realizing it. He woke up earlier, not because he had to, but because he wanted more time. Time to learn. Time to improve. Time to build something that actually belonged to him. One afternoon, while working on a laptop repair near South Congress Avenue, he caught his reflection in a dark screen. For a second, he paused. This version of him looked different. Not richer. Not more successful, at least not yet. But sharper. More present. Less lost. It wasn't the work itself that changed him, it was showing up for it, again and again, especially on days he didn't feel like it. That's where the real shift happened. But growth has a strange way of testing you right when you start believing in yourself. One evening, Ryan took on a repair he wasn't fully ready for, a complex motherboard issue. It was bigger than anything he had handled before. He hesitated before accepting it. But then that familiar thought crept in, if you wait until you're ready, you'll never do it. So he said yes. Hours turned into frustration. Nothing worked the way it was supposed to. The problem was deeper than he expected. His hands moved, but doubt moved faster. By midnight, he sat there, staring at the disassembled device. For the first time in weeks, he felt that old fear again. Maybe I'm not built for this. The room was silent except for the low hum of the city outside. And in that silence, Ryan faced a truth most people run from: starting is hard. Continuing is harder. He had two choices. Walk away, and return to the comfort of thinking, planning, delaying. Or stay, and struggle forward, even if it meant failing. He didn't stand up. He didn't quit. Instead, he did something simple. He tried again. Not perfectly. Not confidently. Just honestly. Step by step. Piece by piece. And somewhere around 2 a.m. something clicked. The device powered on. A small light. A quiet signal. But to Ryan, it felt louder than anything. Not because he fixed it. But because he didn't stop. That moment stayed with him. Not as proof that he would always succeed, but as proof that persistence creates outcomes that hesitation never will. From there, things didn't suddenly become easy, but they became clearer. Ryan started understanding patterns. Fixing things faster. Charging what his work was actually worth. Saying no to people who didn't respect his time. His confidence didn't come from thinking positively. It came from evidence. From doing. From surviving his own doubt. Months later, Ryan stood again near Lady Bird Lake, same water. Same moving city. But everything felt different. Because he was different. He wasn't watching joggers and wondering what it would feel like to move with purpose. He was already moving. His phone buzzed, another request. Then another. Work wasn't something he hoped for anymore. It was something he created. He thought about the version of himself who used to sit here, convincing himself that there was always more time. That version of him wasn't wrong. Time existed. But it didn't wait. That was the difference. Ryan leaned against the railing, looking out at the water as the sun dipped lower. For the first time in a long time, his mind was quiet. Not because life had become perfect. But because he had stopped running from it. He understood something now that couldn't be learned from books, videos, or thinking alone: you don't find your path by waiting. You build it by walking, even when you're unsure where it leads. Life had never paused for him. Opportunities didn't knock twice. Moments didn't repeat themselves just because he wasn't ready the first time. But that no longer scared him. Because now, he didn't need life to wait. He had learned to move.